Let's come to order. First item on our agenda is to call to order roll call and establishment of quorum. Mark, please take it away.
Okay. Agonato,
Present.
Zamora,
Present.
Chan,
Present.
Corradino, absent. Francisco Shea,
Absent.
Jeannie Kang.
Vice President.
Oh, I do that too fast? Apologies. Jeannie Kang.
Present. I said present.
Oh, I didn't hear you. We were laughing. Dr. Amy Matecki.
Present.
Thank you. 6-0, we have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you, everyone, for coming to beautiful Oakland. We know it was a trip for a lot of you, so thank you for making the trip out here. Fellow board member Jamie is very diligent about keeping track of how many meetings we've had this year, and we've had 12 at the conclusion of this year. The fact that we have 12 meetings and 11 items on the agenda just shows you how hard we've been working all year with your help to make sure that we get everything done. So thank you to the board and to the staff and to the public for being so invested in the outcome and ultimately to protect the public and advance this profession. It is now 1:30 in the afternoon. We've had a full morning of meetings, and out of respect for everybody's time, we want to move as expeditiously as possible. So what we're going to do is try and limit public comment a little bit. For those of you who plan to address the board during the public comment periods, we've set aside time for public comment during each agenda item and at the end of the agenda. For those addressing particular agenda items, I will ask that each person limit his or her comments to 2 minutes. If a particular matter requires additional discussion or public input, the board will decide the best way this should occur. We thank everyone for your cooperation and hope this will work out. If it doesn't, then we'll make some changes, but hopefully this helps us get out on time. So that was kind of a part of our agenda item number 2 for opening remarks. The second part of agenda item number 2 is the announcement of the executive officer. So on October 12th, 2016, I had the great pleasure of participating in the swearing in of Mr. Ben Bodia. He is now our full-blown executive director. So, congratulations to Ben. It's been a moment we've been waiting for some time, and we're very happy for you and cannot wait to continue working with you. So thank you very much, and congratulations, Ben.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Can I make some announcement? Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Can I? Okay. I would like to make a little announcement and also congratulations to the Kim Chen. Kim is elected as the president of the Chinese Chamber of Commerce this year.
Wow.
And also, he's a board member for Chinese Hospital, new board member. The thing is elected as a general president of the Guangzhou alumni in United States. That's going to, they have about 20,000 membership in the San Francisco Bay Area, also more and more, much more in the United States. So I want everybody to share the honor.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me a chance.
Sure.
Thank you.
Kevin, we're very proud of you, of all your accomplishments, and very proud to have you on this board. So congratulations for your many successes. May many more come your way.
Yeah, thank you for everybody.
Thank you. And I'm going to do this anyways. We have a new board member joining us. We are now a full-blown board of 7. Her name is Dr. Amy Matecki. She's all the way at the end over here. Doctor, we're very excited for you to join us. We look forward to a lot of good work with you. So thank you very much for sacrificing your time and effort to this.
Thank you, and thank you for your support.
Wonderful. So let's go to number 3, public comment for items not on the agenda. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, let's move on. Public comment for items that are not on the agenda.
So traditionally, this is at the end of the meeting. We've moved it up to the start of the meeting.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lillian. I'm representing AACMA. It's the largest Northern California Chinese Medicine and Acupuncture Association. It has come to our attention that in June, California Acupuncture Board has recommended the National Certification Commission of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine, NCCAOM, to administer tests for potential licensed acupuncturists in California. So we apologize that we were not voicing out early enough. Hopefully, we still have some time to show our concerns. Although the representative from ACCM OM and our leaders had a meeting and answered some of our questions, but many of our members are still very wary about this decision by the Acupuncture Board. So our concerns are really focused on the fees for the examination will be 5 times more than the current California rate. And if this fee will go directly to NCCAOM, what control does California Acupuncture Board has over it? And if it performs unsatisfactorily, what power does Acupuncture Board has to overturn this decision? Second, according to the review of the National Certification Commission of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine examinations, tests administered in California is comparable to NCCAOM, except that NCCAOM needs to add the California regulations and laws. But if it's not better, why do we have to switch and take more tests and pay higher fees if it's not better? So because our focus as professional community is try to elevate and increase our educational standards in California. So we want to make sure that we have worked on, what we have worked on will not be jeopardized. I understand that in our because we represent.
Ma'am, your 2 minutes is over.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
very much.
I hope you will hear our concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
My name is Michelle Lau, the president of the Council of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine Associations. On behalf of the more than 10 associations in the Southern California Acupuncture Association, we want to express our great concern about the same issue that Dr. Wang just mentioned. So, and I know that I have a limited time, so we will sending out a formal letter with all the associations in the whole California what all they concerned about this issue. First thing that is we concern is the public interest and public standard for the examination. That we know that national examination, NCCM, want to take over the California examinations over almost 20 years. So I have been working, this is a very long time. So this time that my concern is that the fee, without discussion and with the public, with the school, with the student, then is so much higher, it's over $2,000 probably, by the end when they take the examination, including the national examination and the acupuncture supplement. So, that's one thing we need the board to give us some input, and we demand some explanation about why the germ that we were heard in the board hearing, that the OPES, they already give us a very good reason that why we should maintain the California acupuncture examination, that the NCCOM does not meet our California standard, and that I would assume that the California examination will be remaining like what we have been done. So, but then 2 months later, that everything changed, that we heard something change. So, okay, I know, the time is off, but doesn't matter. We'll be sending out the letter to you with the board and demand that give us some, information for why that happened like that. And then also.
Thank you. Your 2 minutes is over, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank
and
you.
demand some public hearing. Thank you.
Hi, Ron Zeidman from Five Branches University. I think the profession needs some guidance from the Acupuncture Board on how we submit our complaints of practitioners practicing acupuncture illegally. And This, as you may know, is happening broadly across the U.S. and is now happening in California, where physical therapists are practicing in veterans clinics. We know a specific case down in Monterey. So my question to you is, if you can, and I'll write you as well, the guidance we need to file a complaint against somebody practicing acupuncture without a license in California. Thank you.
Philip Yang from Nansha University. I have a proposal. In California, the Acupuncture Board actually administrating their practice of acupuncture, that scope of practice including acupuncture, herbal medicine, trainer, and everything. But there's two gray areas. One is orthopedics. The other is herbal medicine. Even they are not licensed, they still can practice. Acupuncture Board is supposed to do the management for these two fields, including like the ethics of their practice. If they don't have the management, they are not educated. They do have a lot of sexual harassment issues and more issues. Another is the criteria: who can do the practice, who cannot do the practice. So and also the education requirement and the certificates, something. So we need to. Acupuncture Board is supposed to do the administration. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Again, I'm coming again. My name is Daisy. I'm representing by AACMA. Again, and bring one more time the message to you about the dry needles, physical therapy, practice the dry needles in California. That means they are practice acupuncture needles. This is illegal in the state of California. PD do the dry needling. It is illegal. Here are two evidence, and so I want to just report to the board. So FDA approved the acupuncture needles for use by licensed acupuncture practitioner only in 1996. That means anybody use the needles without acupuncture license is illegal in here. So I would like to report to you. But it happened mainly now in California by physical therapy, maybe chiropractor, or maybe other just the non-licensed, professional. So also the second one is acupuncture needles belong to the medical device, belong to the class 2 medical device in USA. So that's very, very strong the message there. So hopefully the board can do something, force something, and in the future to do. Now everybody know in North Carolina, they have the lawsuit belong to the, just 1 minute, belong to the acupuncture board and the physical therapy board. Because the PT use acupuncture needles in there. The physical therapy board allowed the regulation PT to do practice acupuncture there. That's why the lawsuit happen right now. We hope for board can be win. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
In the interest of making sure that Bina Jangda's comments get submitted into the right portion, I'll deliver a truncated version of her comments that you all heard earlier this morning. Bina Jangda is the director of TCM review seminars for a decade now, and she teaches Kale review, NCCAOM national review, and a pan-Canadian review as well. These are her words. Back in 2012, I attended the acupuncture board meeting to protest the Kale exam, which at that time was not fair for students. I have had a complete change of heart about replacing the Kale with the national exam. Let me explain why. Two things have happened. First, the California Acupuncture Board heard heard the criticisms of the test and took positive action to remedy the flaws of the test, so thank you for that. The second thing is that I've spent 7 years preparing students from around the world to sit the national exam, and that in some states, Florida, New York, and Oregon, for example, the caliber of education is on par with the California education, but that's not so with other states. So my concern is that in California, we've fought hard for the title of primary care physician. If we do away with the CALE and accept the national testing and certification, which many students from other states have a very hard time passing because they don't have the same understanding, then it will undermine the high standards of care that the public can count on when working with a licensed graduate from a California school. We'll have no way to regulate the standard of care, and that risks public safety. The other point is that there's a major difference between the two tests themselves. For the nationals, you only have to do the 4 modules one at a time. You can cram your brain with one and then dump it, cram your brain with the next and dump it, whereas to study for the CALE, you have to be able to integrate all of that information at once.
10 seconds.
That does something very unique for our capacity as practitioners that we need to preserve. So I would encourage the board to keep the CALE exam as it provides a barrier to the quality of acupuncture care in California and ensures the safety of the public in a way that the national exam cannot.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now I'll submit my own comment. My name is Ann Shelton-Crute. I'm an acupuncturist here in California. And I'm speaking today because I agree with Bina Zhengda's comments wholeheartedly. And I didn't understand the value of a California education and of our role as primary care providers in relation to that degree until I started studying for the national exam. I have family out of state, which I'd like to be able to care for legally. So I am currently in the middle of taking the national exam. And what I'm finding is that, yes, the national exam has equivalent material, but it's not an equivalent learning or testing experience. Why does this matter? In other states, our profession doesn't carry the same weight or responsibility. The North Carolina Veteran Association just downgraded acupuncture to a tech level job, and my education is not a tech level job, is not a tech level education. My job is not the safe application of some protocol. I'm trained to discriminate about a patient's condition. My mentors were treating HIV and AIDS in the 80s before the drugs were invented because of this theory and philosophy that we have. I mean, yes, we see protocols administered in hospitals, but it's not the same thing as really staying true to the philosophy and the core of our medicine and diagnosis. So this is what is at risk here today. Moreover, I can't pay my student loans with a tech salary. So our profession is on a precipice right now. In California, we're welcomed into hospitals because of theory and philosophy we provide as acupuncturists, not just for the fact that we use the needles as only one of our modalities. Western science now recognizes the efficacy of our medicine, and my fear is that we may watch Chinese medicine become elevated and more popularized and even famous in America.
10 seconds.
Even as, for a technical skill, even as the true medicine and philosophy that allows us to diagnose so well is in danger of going extinct. So in order to maintain this high level of care, the first step is to keep the CALE and allow the rest of the United States to rise to the standard of California.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Wei Wei. I'm just explaining my opinion because of the education we have and the scope of practice that we have. We should be called Doctor of Chinese Medicine. That's one of my recommendation because years ago we were allowed to be called Doctor of Acupuncture if we get the enough education hours and went through the program. So I hope that someday we can be called Doctor of Chinese Medicine instead of just one part of the medicine. And then the other thing is, about the national exam, the 4-module, the way of doing it is not the right way to ensure the safety of the public and to protect the consumers and to maintain their trust to acupuncturists, to the Chinese medicine. Yeah, we should have a better exam, than the current national exam. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Wonderful. Let's move on then. Agenda item number 4 is the president's report. I have nothing to report. So let's move to agenda item number 5.
Okay.
Staff reports. Take it away, Ben.
Thank you, Hildy. The first item that I'd like to update the board on is the staffing in our office. We have filled the vacancy for the seasonal clerk. We now have a vacancy for the continuing education coordinator and the exam analyst. Both of these positions have been posted, and we are waiting for the hiring process to go to its termination. That's it for hiring. Budget update. We take a look at the material. This is for fiscal month 4. Everything looks good right now, and we were doing fine last budget year as well. We did come under, we did not go over our allotment. I will be meeting in the next few months with the budget's office to go over our budget more closely and adjust some of these expenditure levels to more accurately reflect what the board does spend.
Dan, did we get the $4 million on that?
That hasn't come back yet, but it is scheduled to come back this year.
Oh, this year? Okay.
This 2017. Any questions from the board?
I have a question.
Yes.
Look at this next page. Look at the total revenue and total expenditure. Every year in the projection is that we had a 2.6 million revenue around, but we spend about 3.2 to average of probably 3.5. So every year, according to your budget and the actual spending and the future, we short about 600,000 to 900,000. Now, in order to fund this board, we need more revenue. We had the reserve, the 5 million, but we loaned it to the general fund, and the report is a little bit confused. It looks like we had enough money, but those money is from the reserve. Now, we had a 5 million reserve, and one coming on according to this budget, is coming to the next year, and then 1 million coming to the 18 to 19. So look at if we continue to correct the revenue at 2.6 or 2.7, spend about average 3 to 3.5, 3.6, we pretty much to run out of money. The board without money cannot operate it, so the board have to dissolve, okay, without a fund. So even though right now in the month the reserve looks like we average out close to 7 or 8 months, actually it's not, because we every fiscal year we short money. The only thing we got to run it 9 hours because we had a 5 million reserve fund in the previous board and previous year to accumulate it. If we spend out that, we are not going to have any more money. So my proposal is that you have to work for the budget. The people in the DCA, at least we have to cut our expenses 15 to 20%, okay? And the revenue, we have to raise 10 to 15% in order to balance the budget and make sure the reserve fund is not going to use for the future emergency. If we don't continue to take action on that, we are going in the year 2018 and 19, 2 years from now on, we run out of money if we don't take action. So I like you, the board, and talk to the DCA and see whether they can do something to cut the expenditure, increase the revenue. And in order to balance the budget, we used our reserve fund.
I will be having that discussion with the department, and we will be bringing, staff will be bringing material to the board in terms of fee raises. Now, fee raises requires a statute in most situations. It seems that the CE provider fee is set in our regulations, so the board can review that and raise that price and increase the revenue there. But normally the way a board handles seeking more money by raising licensing fees, and that we would have to seek legislative support for.
Right, and I think that's something we would have to take up in the Education Committee, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that might be something
Or
we'd have to look
exec, yeah.
at, we'd have to look at, Kidman, to do. Because it looks like, Ben, here, it looks like the legislature approved something like about $3 million a year in our budget.
Just over.
So that's up to their discretion, correct, in terms of the Department of Finance, what gives us? Do we ever have any leeway with that in terms of asking for more?
We can definitely ask. That never hurts.
Okay.
So we can definitely.
But it sounds
grab
like
something.
increasing fees might be a way that we do this eventually.
That's the traditional route for a board to go, yeah.
And from what I remember, apparently our fees are pretty low compared to other boards, right?
They're relatively low.
Okay. So Kidman, yeah, that might be something we look at, for
Okay,
sure.
sure.
And I think Kidman's been saying this like at least for 2 years now.
Yeah, we
I
do,
remember,
yeah,
he's been
yeah,
saying
we
this
can,
and I,
because we
Yeah.
have the reserve 5 million,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can use that.
Yeah.
Because they are going to
Yeah.
refund it to us, right?
So I think as the new EO, you have a job task here.
Definitely.
And I think the other part that we discussed also was looking at the continuing education fees and provider fees. And that is an area where I feel like we can, kind of remodernize that as we've been remodernizing the disciplinary guidelines and so forth. So whatever committee we need to put that in, as far as provider fees as well as continuing education area of increasing fees, I think is good. And, as far as exam fees, I think that's also tied in with the new law that's been passed. So, and I agree, I think we have to make sure, and I spoke to you about this before, like really watch how that process goes, and I would like to be part of that discussion for sure.
I agree with what Jeannie said, and I think at the turn of the year, what we hope to do is have another committee meeting for, especially the executive committee, of which Kidman is the chair, and part of the charge of the executive committee is to identify and recommend to the full board areas in which we can increase our revenues and cut our expenditures. So thank goodness we have an accountant on the board. He'll be giving an extra special eye on what's going on, but I think it's very timely when taken in concert with your scheduled meeting with budgets. We should be addressing this by the turn of the year, and that should give the staff enough time to process these recommendations so that if we need to start some more regulatory and legislative packages, then
Right.
we have the opportunity to do so. As we've seen, it takes years.
Right, well, it can be timely because ultimately it sounds like we need statutory authority to do this. So we would need to submit something to DCA, which then would need to go to the legislature to find an author for this for us. So it is timely, so we start working on that.
Once the EO talked to the budget from the DCA, then our committee should be at the meeting to discuss these things and see what can we do to balance our operating budget.
Absolutely. We look forward to your report.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on the budget? Exam update. This information was presented in September, so I wanted to bring it up again, just we didn't have a chance to go over it, but this is for the August 10th exam. Overall pass rate for first-time test takers was at 75%, and repeat test takers' pass rate was at 57%. So all within standard figures for the test. And we've just broken it down in a couple different ways. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I have a question. I remember in the previous board meeting, we had discussed about the litigator. We should have some kind of limitation, how many times they should take it, because every board meeting, we look at the examination, the percentage is around the same. It's about 30%, 35%. And I don't know why it keeps, almost 4 years, and there's no improvement. Then we still let those people retake, and drop this percentage lower and lower. We discussed in the previous board meeting, we say we limit to 3 to 5 times. After that, they have to stop it and go to the school to do some more study and take some more continuing education. Then they take the exam again. And we should have, education committee should,
Well, that would be the exam committee.
exam committee should has some kind of improvement on this proposal. or make this thing, make the student aware. And you have to study hard to make sure you take the exam. It's just not, you have the money, you take exam, time, still look at it, always less than 35%. Every examination, the retaker. So I think we should do something about it, the exam committee to have some kind of recommendation to how to improve or eliminate those retaker of the examination. Let them study hard. You not only have the money, you have the time, but you have to study hard. You have to go back to school to learn more.
Thank you, Kim. And we do have some sample language that staff is working on. I believe this is also a strategic plan item to address in the next year as well. So we will be bringing that to the exam committee in 2017.
I think we also began to discuss this item, but when we started talking about the adoption of a national exam with a California supplement, we kind of let this fall by the wayside. So I think this is a perfect opportunity to find out exactly what we need to address, given that we're hoping to adopt a new structure forward. Kim is doing a very good job in highlighting all the committee meetings that need to take place, and I think the examination committee is the next one that needs to happen around the turn of the year. So let's, to the extent that we can, let's put this on the agenda for discussion at the examination committee meeting. And if we can, let's also bolster that meeting with statistics. Perhaps the re-examinees statistics can be broken down further by first-time retakers, second-time retakers, so that there's enough information to digest in preparation for that agenda item.
Will do. I have staff working on that right now, actually.
Wonderful.
Ben, so some of these schools have like 0 passed but 1 failed, or 1 passed and 4 failed, and so I understand they're like probably retaking it, right? When there's 1 passed and 4 failed and 0 passed but 1 failed, there's certain data, I mean, that doesn't make sense. So when you see this like repetitively for a school, is there something in our statute?
There's nothing in our statute or our regulations that would put a school in a watch status based on their pass rate.
Okay.
It's just shown in the student's ability to pass the exam.
Something to discuss in the exam committee as well, I think. I'm seeing patterns in certain schools that has repetitive patterns of 0 pass, but there's more retakers. It doesn't make sense. I want to know more, like, what is the data behind it? What is the reason behind why some of these schools, and I understand they're the smaller schools, but I think we should at least find out what is behind the scenes with that kind of data.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, human trafficking report. This is to provide a bit more detail to the report I gave to the Assembly's Business and Professions Committee on June 8th. They had held a hearing to check in with the healing arts boards on what is currently being done to combat human trafficking. And first and foremost, the board doesn't have an official human trafficking enforcement category, nor does it have a prostitution category, as we discussed earlier in our tracking system. So what we've done is we've taken a look at all of our case descriptions, all of our discipline descriptions, to see if any of that qualifies as prostitution. Nothing's come up for human trafficking. We had several hits for prostitution. And in the last several years, perhaps in the last 10, I should say, the board has been working hard to crack down on any kind of prostitution-related cases. And we think that the human trafficking could be related to these prostitution cases. but we have never received any direct evidence of such. Since 1987, we've received a total of 150 complaints that could involve prostitution. In the last 10 years, we've received 20, I believe, and in the last 2, we've received 2. So the numbers have definitely decreased in terms of just related to prostitution. Part of the limitation, as was discussed earlier, was in regard to the conditions of office. If there were prostitution charges brought up or sexual acts that were conducted in the office, it had to be tied to a conviction to prostitution. And if the attorney dropped the charges or negotiated them down, then there was no conviction for the board to pursue any further action. That's why we're pursuing these conditions of office, to increase our authority to enforce that. Additionally, the board could look to open a discussion with associations, so that the associations in acupuncture can be talking to other medical professions as well, to see how they identify signs of human trafficking in the patients that they see, and the board can help facilitate that discussion and communication to its licensees, or working with the schools to address that in any curriculum that is addressed in the programs. And we also seek to work with any other agencies, including law enforcement or other boards and bureaus, to help identify human trafficking.
Ben, we're already in talks with local law enforcement, right? We're part of that kind of statewide identification mechanism to work with them if they need anything, is that right?
We definitely address any questions that they bring to us. It's usually handled by the enforcement unit. We are more than willing to work with them, yes.
Wonderful.
And we're across the hall from the Division of Investigation. We interact with law enforcement daily, so we keep in pretty good touch with them.
It's great news, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions about that? Okay. Strategic plan update. If you turn to your materials. It's really good for the board to be updated at least once a year in terms of how they are meeting their strategic plan goals. And what happened was, back in 2013, the board got together, and I believe this was a very new board at the time, and set out a bunch of goals. And so here we are. If you want to take a look. Our licensing goal has been completed. Everything has been addressed in terms of what the board can do for cashiering. We are working to find ways to label things a bit more appropriately in our system. And it has reduced our delays. Our delay time has gone from 10 days to 2. Our most recent report last month came out to 2. So this is incredibly fast. Once we receive an application that qualifies, it's 2 days. So rapid turnaround. In terms of enforcement, you'll note that we have 4 main goals, and all of these are being worked on right now. For example, today we reviewed the disciplinary guidelines, goal 2.1. 2.2, the uniform standards we discussed at the previous board meeting, and staff is moving forward with that language. We are looking into the inspection authority aspect and talking with DFI about some pointers there. So we hope to have more information for that soon and bring that to the board.
Does it say non-compliant based, or is it non-complaint based?
Complaint.
Okay, got it.
So it's for the board to be able to go in at any time
Okay,
and inspect a clinic.
got it.
And then we're looking at the strengthening of the recertification process for reinstatement of the inactive license. We'll be doing that by regulation. For example, it was suggested earlier that we include ethics as a requirement for inactive status. We can discuss that during the CE ethics requirement, but we can definitely bring that forward for the inactive regulations.
Got it.
For education, goal 3.1, Evaluate curriculum standards to ensure professional qualification and public safety. The board will evaluate whether financial standards for schools are needed. That second portion is going to be handled entirely by Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education and ACOM. And so we've already tackled that, moving to the 1117 SB 1246 requirements. In terms of evaluating curriculum standards, this is part of the items that Jamie mentioned earlier that we will be taking up later on this year in terms of reevaluating the curriculum requirements, the observation or the supervision definition and requirements there. Item 3.2. We were also looking, one of the goals was to have a higher prerequisite for entering into an acupuncture training program. So we'll be discussing with all of our stakeholders, along with the curriculum aspect, perhaps strengthening the requirements to get into the program. 3.3, evaluate school courses and materials to ensure compliance with board's curriculums. We've just completed all of our compliance visits, and schools are looking a lot better. We have, Jay will give a more thorough report later on, but we've had a good response from that. So there's one off for education. Promulgate regulations to require international applicants and students attending non-English track schools to pass TOEFL exam before being eligible to sit for the California Acupuncture licensing exam. That also will be handled during the curriculum discussions. Although this is for foreign students, the schools don't have a direct role in this. However, currently, schools that offer different language tracks other than English do have their own TOEFL requirements, but the board does not see how these students are faring. They're not identified, so we don't know if the general California public, if their needs and if their safety are being addressed by communication being facilitated in English. So we will be taking that up as well in this coming year. 3.5, Education Committee will evaluate the feasibility of enhancing school curriculum regulations by adding a required course in a standardized acupuncture terminology. The need for this will be addressed in our stakeholder meetings on curriculum this coming year. Any questions on education before I go forward? Goal 4, professional qualifications. Evaluate the approved continuing education course list and create a defined scope for continuing education coursework that focuses on improving practice knowledge, best practices, and updated research. So this is part of what the ethics CE requirement is dealing with, and we are looking at other areas that we can clarify or improve the scope for continuing education. We are reviewing, as Jay said, every application that comes in, and in the last 8 months or so, I've not been able to fully fill the position of continuing education coordinator as I've been acting or interim executive officer. So I've been working with staff and training staff in that area, and so we are now putting more eyes on those applications and hope to get them thoroughly processed. In that sometimes you can have a distance education course, for example, that is teaching but not described in the objectives, a hands-on method. And so we want to make sure that distance education courses are reserved just for items that don't require hands-on practice, as a live course would be best for that. Formalize, item number 2, formalize the continuing education audit process of the Education Committee's review of potentially non-compliant continuing education courses and providers. As was discussed earlier, we are looking to strengthen the CE provider enforcement. We feel that a fee structure would also work on that as well, on the other side, to make sure that quality providers are stepping forward and that staff time is properly utilized. 4.3, review past occupational analysis studies to identify improvements to the evaluation process and implement those improvements during the next analysis. This is completed and ongoing. We do an occupational analysis every 5 years, and we just completed one last year, so we will look to do one again in 4 years. Evaluate the CALE exam to ensure continued test validity and security. As a result of the comparison between the national examination and the CALE, we have completed that review as well. Any questions on professional qualifications? Goal 5, outreach. 5.1, form a licensee education committee to create educational materials for licensees and what you need to know educational series that will be accessible from the website. We are looking to create more detailed FAQs. This will be a project for 2017. We will bring it up to the education committee and leave it up to them or the full board to decide whether or not a special committee would be required, or if an ad hoc committee will satisfy it with just 2 members. 5.2, increase outreach to interested stakeholders by leveraging cost-effective technology to increase understanding of the acupuncture profession and the board. We also are working on this right now. At the June meeting, we presented the association info sheet that we urge all associations to fill out and send to the board so that we may have a better idea and also put their contact information on our website. The contact information we have right now for some organizations are a little outdated. Some organizations are no longer in existence, or we can't reach them at any of their contact info that was listed on our board website. And so what I've gone and done is I've had the staff remove anything that does not have a current contact address. But we are looking to increase that outreach with those associations as well in this coming year.
Good.
5.3, work collaboratively with state and national professional associations to increase awareness of the board's functions. I think that will come to head when we have greater outreach with the associations. Being called to testify before the BMP committee in June was part of that process as well, as we make more state agencies aware of what our board does. But we will be continuing that kind of interaction. 5.4, educate stakeholders on requirements of the Affordable Care Act and the implications for electronic records management. In discussion with past legal counsel, Kelsey, I'm not sure if we talked with you about this. It was determined that this is outside of the board's authority. The Affordable Care Act is a federal level legislation, and so we would be working, if anything, with anything California-based. Staff recommends that we remove this goal. The electronic record management is not something that needs to be dictated by the board. Those are in professional standards that should be agreed upon. And 5.5, modify the board's website to ensure accessibility and increased usability. We are constantly working on that. We're looking at refining our FAQs so that they're clear and concise and putting out more FAQs. We have one for enforcement that we're talking with Hildy about, updating, just making it easier for consumers as well as respondents to understand what's happening as they're going through that process. As well as for CE providers, so they understand that process as well. Any questions on goal 5?
The only thing, Ben, I want to add to 5.4
Okay.
is that eventually, I mean, I know that the Affordable Care Act by itself may not be under our authority, but eventually, in the next several years, everything is going to be electronic database records, and that's going to affect our practitioners. And so how that information is going to be recorded in the office settings, so when we do site reviews and so forth, there's like, I mean, it's not going to happen right away, but there's going to be no paper trail. Everything is going to be recorded. So as that law gets changed in the medical profession, we have to figure out a way how the board is going to adapt to that. And I know the MDs are already on it, but I think acupuncturists, we're not completely required to change right away, but eventually we're all going to go in that direction. So that didn't come up in the strategic plan, 2013, but going forward, that does have to somehow get adapted into how we're going to look at that in site visits and so forth.
That's a good point, and I think it's something that we should pay attention to once we sit down to do the next strategic plan for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. The last goal area is administration. First one being ensure adequate staffing levels within all areas of the board to fulfill the board's mandate and achieve board goals. This is ongoing. It has been completed. We have, like I said, started the hiring process for these last 2 remaining vacant positions. And we're always looking to be completely staffed. So it really helps. As you can see, we have a lot of work to do, and it helps to have all the staff to do it. 6.2, establish an ongoing working report of pending regulatory projects and priorities to inform the board, the legislature, and the public of the ongoing status of these projects. And in the last several years, you've been hearing from our policy coordinator, Mark Johnson, always updating the board on the status of all our regulations and statutes that would affect the board. 6.3, create targeted training for new board members to provide further details on board and government processes. We are looking to look at the administrative manual, and we've also started the board member orientation, although this has been going on for a while. That's being updated, and that's offered by the department. We are looking at staff level, providing information to board members specifically about the acupuncture board. And that helps board members understand their roles clearly and how the staff can help them address that.
Bagley Keenan Act training.
Bagley Keenan Act training.
Yes.
Got it, writing it down.
Yeah, I'll get on it. Yeah.
And then Ben, I think what we should do for next time in terms of the strategic plan, and it looks like it would go under administration and piggybacks off with, about, Kitman's discussion on the budget, we should have a bullet point discussing or having a goal for our budget and how we go about that in further years. Setting funding goals or just administrative goals in terms of the budget, because I looked at, we don't have anything related to our budget in our strategic plan, so it's probably a big issue we have to start focusing on for next time.
So in terms of training for budget training?
I'm not sure,
or
it's just
budget
something
goals?
we probably should have in there and have a discussion about it.
I'll include that for
I think
discussion.
that's a good idea because, obviously, the DCA people came and did the whole strategic planning with us, so obviously it wasn't in here because of the whole, there must be a template.
Yeah.
But one of the things that, I have to agree, the budget, the way that budget expert came, remember one year and explained, it still flew over my head. So I think it's important for the board members to get training in that or have a little bit, how we do with the online sexual harassment thing, some program that maybe Kelson could help us.
Oh, I can.
Yeah. But you can find out that there's certain programs within DCA that trains board members in at the orientation level, so that we can really pay attention to that. We are lucky to have an accountant on the board, but we don't always have an accountant on the board in previous boards, and so this have been highlighted because we have an accountant. But it's true, in 2 years, what's gonna happen with the budget, and the budget expert languaging still, we're not expert at that. And I would like the board members coming in to really get a better idea, get a better hold of, how we do our finances.
Certainly. Since we are going to be looking at the budget in 2017 a lot more closely, would
Yeah.
it help the board if I invited the budget's office to
Yeah.
give
Yeah,
another
like
presentation?
last time, yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And tell them to speak English. Yeah,
Or Kitman can translate for us. Okay, and then the last item, develop desk manuals for all board functions to ensure proficiency, performance, and succession planning. And we have done that with all the units. We're now going to be doing it for policy as well, just so we have backup. Mark just received training from the Office of Administrative Law in regulations, so it'd be nice to get a board version of that education.
Stuff around to halt a little bit, so
Yeah.
slow down a little bit when it's out.
But yes, we've actually been pretty good. We just finished the exam one this year, and education's been updated, so.
So then it seems like everything, if ideally, we could be done with all this year, correct? Ideally.
Ideally, we are shooting for having all of this completed, yeah.
Which would put us in good line for the sunset review in 2018, correct?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
I have a couple comments. One is to acknowledge that this is a lot of work. For example, goal 4.4, evaluate the KALE exam to ensure continued test validity and security. This is not something that we could have done in one day, let alone 1 month or 1 year. So when we're looking at a strategic plan, we're really looking at something that requires a lot of time and effort and resources to address each and every one of these. Second point is that we formulated the strategic plan update in one of our first board meetings. before any of us knew anything, at least the public members knew anything about acupuncture.
Before we knew each other.
Before we knew each other, before we knew each other's names. I think we were 3 legal counsels ago at that point. So we really did this at the beginning of our work. That being said, it's by no means exhaustive. I think as the critical issues have come across our desk, we've done a good job in addressing them on an ad hoc basis and making sure that regardless of whether it's on the strategic plan or not, things are addressed in a timely and proper fashion. So I acknowledge the things that we've done and the things that are on here as well. And then thirdly, I think we should take a look at this and figure out what the committee assignments should be, because as you've said with 4.2 especially, that touches on CE provider enforcement, and that was something that we were going to look at on enforcement committee. If we are really on track to finish these things by the end of this year, which is a very short time from now, we should get the discussion started now. So let's go through this and assign things out to committee, start the discussion, because after it gets to the committee level, there might be additional committee meetings necessary. By the time it gets to the full board, by the time it gets through all the other processes, it could take us a while. So let's be conscious of what needs to go to the committee level. It sounds like the education committee has a lot of things to do already, but I have no hesitation in assigning you more things to do. So
Bring it on.
let's do it. But this is very helpful. Thank you for doing this.
Certainly. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
All right, let's move on to agenda item 5B, which is enforcement reports. Christine?
So the first report is from the September meeting, and we didn't get to address it. And, it's a report for quarter 4 of fiscal year 2015-2016, which covers April 1st to June 30th. We had a total of 83 complaints received, 82 were closed, referred for investigation, and an average intake time of 4 days. For investigations, a total of 79 investigations were initiated. At the close of the quarter, there were 171 investigations pending, and 98 investigations were closed. And of those 98, it took an average day, it took 196 days on average. For disciplinary actions, we requested 5 cases, or referred to the Attorney General's office. At the close of the quarter, there were 24 cases pending at the Attorney General's office. We filed 5 accusations and statement of issues, and 7 decisions became effective, which was an average overall process time of 1,301 days, and there were 31 citations issued and 29 open probation cases staff was monitoring. For the trend analysis, we look at last year's, last year would have been 14-15 quarter 4 data, comparing it to then, and I'll just highlight some of the notable things. For the complaint trends, the most notable increase in complaints is found in the charges and convictions received by the board, which increased from 44 to 51. So that just means the board is seeing more applicants with criminal histories to review and further evaluate. For investigation trends, the most notable changes are the total investigations pending decreasing by 16% from 204 last quarter to 171 this quarter. The other noteworthy change is the average investigation time decreasing by 30% from 281 days last quarter to 196 days this quarter. Formal discipline trends, complaints referred went from 11 in quarter 4 last year to 5 this quarter, resulting in a 55% decrease. And let's see, the total decisions that became effective have increased by 133%, with just 3 decisions last quarter compared to 7 this quarter. However, we continue to see no real consistency in our total average days for discipline. Any questions about that report? Okay.
Yeah,
So.
I think in the morning we discussed the effort extent of the continuing education. The case the table or the case is most likely is the people violated. And I think the continuing education emphasizing the effort will be help to reduce this investigation. You look at it, an unprofessional count of 50% pending, and criminal charge 50% or 50 pending, and 420 pending. You look at this three major categories, it's 120, and a total of 171. So I think the education and the effort, we should be, put more emphasis and more hour. We're going to hopefully reduce this pending investigation, and then let all the licensees have more aware what they're going to do.
Yeah, hopefully that will help and
Yeah.
see less issues. Okay, moving on to the second enforcement report, which covers quarter one of fiscal year 2016-2017, July 1st to September 30th. We saw 41 complaints received, and 43 complaints were either closed or referred to investigation, and an average intake time of 5 days. For the investigations, there were 38 investigations initiated, 115 investigations pending at the close of the quarter, and there were a total of 113 investigations closed, with the average days resulting in 193. For the disciplinary actions, 4 cases referred to the Attorney General's office for discipline. At the close of the quarter, that there were 21 cases pending, and we filed 6 accusations and statement of issues, and 5 decisions became effective. The average overall process time for those 5 decisions was 900 days. We issued 46 citations, and there are now 33 open probation cases. At the close of quarter one, there were. For the complaint trends, same thing, we compared this quarter one data to last fiscal year's quarter one data. In doing so, this quarter we saw a decrease in complaints compared to last year from 69 to 41, which is a 41% decrease in volume. For the investigation trends, in comparing last year's investigation statistics to this year, the primary trend shows a lot of productivity at this phase of the complaint cycle. The total investigations pending went from 187 to 115, which was a 39% decrease. The total investigations closed went from 86 to 113, which increased by 31%. And we are meeting our 200-day target for the performance measure on the average number of days to complete an investigation. Formal discipline trends, this quarter continues to show that the majority of the backlog from prior years has been worked through or already referred for disciplinary action. The total decisions that became effective have decreased by 44%, with 9 decisions last year compared to 5 this year. The board continues to see no real consistency in its total average days for discipline.
Wonderful. I have a few comments, but I'll let the board members go first because I talk a lot. Does anyone else have any comments?
The only comment I have is I really enjoy this layout and the trends and the graph and the boxes you've created. It's an easier flow for me to understand as opposed to previous years. So let's keep this format. Okay. It really helps me understand exactly what's going on. So thank you. Whoever idea that was is smiling on your face, Ben and Christine. Good job.
Any other board members with comments? All right. Christina, one question, one comment. On the first part under complaint trends for quarter one fiscal year 16-17 trend analysis, it says this quarter saw a decrease in complaints compared to last year of 41%. And then if you look at the previous quarter, we've decreased in complaints by over half. Mm-hmm. What is the cause of this decrease across the board? We're lower from this time last year and we're lower from last quarter.
Previous quarter.
By a lot.
I've noticed just the public complaints have slowed down a lot. We've gotten less public complaints. We've also gotten less subsequent arrest notifications to the DOJ system. I don't know. The only thing that is probably going to pick up again is the applicant convictions that we're looking, the criminal histories that we're looking at, which get reported under the charges and convictions. So you'll probably see that in the next quarter because enforcement staff is opening up a bunch of those because we just had the application deadline for the March exam. But I don't know. I've seen a dip. I have no idea why.
I mean, on the one hand, it's very good.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it could be concerning.
Right.
So I think there was a public comment earlier about how we need to educate the public on how to make these complaints, and maybe we can do that to make sure that this isn't some glitch in the system, or that people aren't afraid in reporting that this is actually,
Right.
an improvement in performance all around. So
One thing is that notice to consumer regulation went effective October 1st. I think we probably need to provide more ample notice to all the licensees, but that's going to be required, where licensees need to post that they're regulated by the Acupuncture Board. So hopefully that will direct people to look at the website and understand the complaint process.
Maybe act as a deterrent too as well, for those activity.
Right, yeah.
We're all watching.
And we may see an increase in complaints in the future as people today discussed unlicensed activity, so.
Oh, yeah. Right.
wonderful. And then the second comment was under formal discipline trends on page 4 for fiscal year 16-17, it says this quarter continues to show that the majority of the backlog from prior years has been worked through or already referred for disciplinary action. And I just wanted to congratulate you and Cricket because that backlog issue has been something we've been working through for as long as I can remember on being on this board. So if you're saying we're now in a position to move forward instead of making up for lost times, that needs more than a sentence. It needs underline and bold and a happy face. So congratulations on doing that. Thank you.
Seriously, thank you so much. I noticed that, and I'm really glad that Hilda's pointing that out.
I mean, we'll always see some cases that take longer than others, so there is just a natural, carve out of backlog in enforcement because of those more complex cases, but.
Take the compliment.
It's good. It's good. It's looking really good.
5 gold stars.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to the education report. Jay?
Have the talking stick?
Yeah.
We'll take public comment again. Everything.
Okay, this is just a general overview of what's been going on with education. Just wanted to inform the board that the board has completed compliance site visits to all our approved training programs. 21 in-state and 3 out-of-state compliance site visits were completed in fiscal year of June 2015, which is quite a clip. The remaining 9 out-of-site visits were completed as of June 2016. Training programs that are involved in this reimburse the board for all travel costs and SMEs for all their travel costs. The board is responsible for the hourly cost of the staff and the SMEs. So in some sense, we've split some of those costs, but every program is current with that. There was no problem in collecting any of those fees, and the schools were completely cooperative in that process. The board has received full 1399-434 curriculum from all our currently approved training programs, and in addition, we have clinical compliance corrective reports from every training program that the board has had site visits for. I'll let everybody look through the numbers below here, in terms of the compliance status. Overall, and I just wanted to let the school programs know that the board, I've instituted to our web team, if you'll look on the approved training school page on our website, there was a page where the reports were clickable, and we're going to remove that, and those reports will be available in another part of the board, but the approved training program will just stand as approved training program. So. And we've had some feedback around that, and then when ACOM has done visits and whatever, they've been concerned about that. So, also in changes of, as a result of our site visit, there's been some changes in training program approval. As a result, 4 programs no longer have board approval. One of the programs merged with another campus, so that was just a voluntary merger, and there was no issues with that. 3 of our out-of-state programs chose to terminate their relationship with California approval in lieu of having a site visit and curriculum reviews. And so that was voluntary. They all requested voluntary to be approved, to cease as being board-approved training programs. In addition, the board had identified 5 currently approved training programs that are in jeopardy in relation to the SB 1246. They're lacking accreditation standard with the Accreditation Commission for Acupuncture and Oral Medicine. There's been formal communication with all those institutions, and we've actually had communication with ACOM in that light, and all of those programs have initiated letters of intent to pursue accreditation with ACOM. So that's moving along quite nicely. In addition, the education unit has streamlined and revised our training program initial application and our compliance reporting process, compliance report, to give more efficiency and a kind of a clearer report, and that more clearly represents what we're doing on our curriculum reviews. And then also, moving on, the board has initiated positive relationships with both the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education as well as the Accreditation Commission for Acupuncture and Oral Medicine. We have developed processes that facilitate the implementation of SB 1246 with both of these agencies. This has involved close collaboration with the Bureau and also with ACOM. We've developed processes for easy sharing of information or triggering complaints across the board. We've had multiple collective actions. In fact, we've had a couple of actions that have taken place with ACOM, BPPE, and CAB on the same site visit, which was really instructional for us to all see what parts we do and what parts we don't do. So that was actually quite eye-opening, and is going to, we're very impressed with the Bureau and what they can add to our kind of institutional piece, financial evaluation in the school, production of students, and we just have a very good relationship with them, and we have a very good relationship with ACOM. The board is, well, I already mentioned this, we've updated our curriculum review process. Okay, and we've executed those relationships, so I'll just leave that be. Moving on to continuing education. Continuing education continues to process a very high volume of continuing education provider applications and course approvals. These numbers are as of October 1st, but as of October 1st, we had 1,354 continuing education providers, and we had processed, as of October, 2,524 course applications. That's an average of 280 applications per month. The unit continues to absorb and process this workload, sharing the duties amongst multiple staff members. We've facilitated, again, efficiency and ability, the way that things have been submitted. Particularly one thing we've done, there's a dedicated acupuncture continuing education mailbox that allows direct submission to that unit so it can quickly get routed and processed, and actually time-stamped, that facilitates easy communication between us and the providers. Overall, processing time are improving, and workflow is becoming more and more efficient. And then we're looking to full staffing in the near future, and I think that'll be quite helpful. And in terms of the tutorial program, again, these are numbers as of October. There are currently 49 active tutorials going on in the state of California, which, if people aren't familiar with that, tutorial is a program where you'll work with a licensee. About half the program is done in conjunction with an approved training program. And so they work, they'll work and log their hours directly with me along the way, and that can lead to a path of taking the CALI. There's no degree with it, but it allows you to be able to sit for the CALI exam. So I said 49 active tutorials. I updated the number. There's actually 8 active tutorial applications that are currently under review. this process is it's a very traditional form of traditional oriented, and for some applicants it becomes a very, very good source, like certain foreign applicants that have a very difficult time working through the current education system can work really well with that system and get licensed and actually add to the profession. The tutorial pass rates at the Cali seem to be very close to the school performances. I did just a quick audit of 2014 through 2016, and in that, the first-time test takers achieved a 66% pass rate, and with retakers yielding about 50% pass rate. There were 10 new licenses earned during that period due to the tutorial program, and that program administration and processing status is current to date. And so I've lovingly did the school compliance programs as wrestling with the bear, and the bear is getting quite tame, so I appreciate the schools and their work and their continuing cooperation with the process, and that's.
So Jay, the three out of the state training programs that chose to terminate their California approval, can you give us a little bit more insight on that? Because I know, is this still part of the New York school that?
Well, that was one of the schools. I mean, basically, they just really weren't they communicated that either that financially was too much of a burden for them, or that they didn't feel like that their curriculum was compliant, and they hadn't had a visit from the board for a long enough period of time, and they knew that this SB 1246 was coming up, and so they were just putting that on hold. And so it was really their choice to not go through the board's process of what it would take for them to address our concerns.
It was just their lack of readiness.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I just wanted to know more insightfully what the problem was. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, basically just how it happened. I would reach out to them to set up a site visit, and then they just said that they couldn't complete that. They didn't want to deal with that, and so there was a process of sort of clarifying how we were going to go about, dealing with that. And in our negotiations, they all were able to present letters of just voluntary withdrawal. Okay. And so some of those programs may come back around.
Sure. Yeah. Well, this is a good sign. We've done our part in doing the site visit, so they're responding in kind to that process.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're hoping, to have all our outstanding curriculum reviews, completing this process in Q1 completed, so that we'll be ready for, we're anticipating that there's going to be a number of new applications coming in because there's a number of ACOM approved schools that are not currently approved, and so there's it's an easier pathway for them. And then also sort of the doctoral piece. There's a lot of programs that are wanting to do doctoral programs, and so I've had a number of inquiries along that line.
Okay, so I think the fact that you found out about the five approved training programs that were lacking accreditation, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I think that is a very good, leeway into what's coming ahead. So I appreciate that work. Now, regarding the continuing education update, 1,354 providers.
That's right. So it's actually 1,358.
Wow.
So as an average, we had 18,000 or 19,000 licensees. So looks like is that every one provider had 7 or 8 students to attend those continuing education. And also you had 2,524 courses.
Right.
So you divide it by 19,000 licensees, it looks like each course is only 13 and 14 people average to attend it. So it looks like the provider, had very few students and continue to provide education. Must be they making good money. Otherwise, not going to continue to do that because you only had 13 and 14 attendee, and you still continue. And you got to be something. The board have to looking for those providing fees because you only had the average 14 attendee to your courses. You still continue to provide these education courses. Must be making big money on that.
Well, and it's even more than that because we have some very major providers that are doing many students, and there's a number of providers that they'll cancel or they have very low attendance, so they're doing it for some they just want to do their thing or
That
something
is
like
true.
that. But so, I think that the, ongoing review of continuing education is very timely, both in terms of cost and in terms of the gateway into providing that. And then what I could see is that you might have a bigger provider that if people want to do it, they could instruct through that. I mean, there's another number of providers that do that, are a gateway for many, many different instructors, but they really hold the quality and the structure together. And, all the schools provide that piece too, as well.
I
so.
think I bring this up because I don't know how the other boards are, the numbers exist in other boards like Chiro, PT, AMA, what have you. But this is, I think, too high.
I agree.
And I think since the new job position is being filled, I would really like to look at this because it's something that has been interesting for me over the years as a board member. This is an area where I think the board has to kind of do a cleanup.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
And,
just discussed it's
because
going to be in the education committee. So.
Yeah, and I think if the more, as a practitioner, we know which one the big ones are.
Right.
Which one are the legitimate ones, and which ones that most people attend. And then we also know the ones that have like one or two people and they want to get together, at the house and.
Right.
Hey, let's get something out of it, and then they create it. So I, as a practitioner, understand both sides of this issue, and I think it's important that we decipher as a board, the legitimacy of those that are really providing good information and those that are not. And this is something that in the next year or two, we need to crack down on.
Right. And we have discussed, we just haven't had the resources.
Yeah.
But to
I
have an
understand.
auditing, have the board have a presence. There's been a bunch of ideas floated around how that we could do that so that we could have our eyes and ears out there and reporting. Because as a 30-year licensee, I've been to many of them, and knowing what the regulation is and what happens, there's definitely room for improvement there.
I second that.
Yeah.
So, something we need to look at then.
Definitely. And also, just to clarify a little bit, although we've awarded 1,358 provider numbers out there, there are a number of those, and I can't say it's a majority in any sense, but that haven't renewed their licenses. Our regulations don't allow for awarding an expired number to a new provider.
Yeah.
So we just keep counting up. So what we can do is get back to you with the number
We'll
of
find
active
some real numbers
providers.
on that, how many there's actually.
That would be
That is
pretty
usually
helpful.
in about
Probably
2
only like
years ago.
1,200.
Yeah, it's pretty close to that, actually.
No big deal, yeah.
No, still is less than 10 people.
About 2 or 3 years ago, I believe the number was like at 890 or low 900s. And we were already at 1,100
Well,
at that
ideally,
point.
what's I mean, for
That's
the,
what I
for,
wanna
for the
ask,
licensees, what's an ideal?
What the other boards are
Right.
doing, I wanna know what that
Yeah.
is. And I think there's an idea out there that it's pretty easy to become an acupuncture provider. And-
It's not a rumor, it is.
Well, I'm just being polite. I'm being polite. So, so we got the idea.
We're
Okay.
working on that.
Yeah.
Because
Continuing education is actually a topic that I think it belongs in a lot of different committees. We're talking
Yeah.
about doing a CE provider audit, we're talking about putting it in the education committee. I think as a potential source of revenue, we
Yep.
could actually put that in our larger budget discussion under the executive committee. So let's really transition the CE analysis very heavily on the committee level.
Great.
So that's great.
Any board discussion, and then we'll take public comment?
I thought you, because you didn't do public
Oh.
comment on all the other ones.
We're taking public comment at the very end on all of the item 5 issues. So we'll get to that in a second.
Thank you,
Okay.
Jay. Thank you for
Thank
that
you.
report.
Yeah,
I don't think I've seen a report like that, so I really appreciated it. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll improve my format. I'm going to get the memo heading at the top so that I fit in
We're
with
into
my.
the formatting right now,
Right.
yeah.
Just need the content, that's all.
Thank you very much, Jay. A lot of work. Thank you very much for doing all of that. Look forward to a lot of your education updates, especially since you'll be working very closely with the committee to really analyze these issues.
Yeah.
Let's move on to deregulatory update. Mark?
Okay, I'll just be briefly addressing the regs listed in the agenda, so I'll be pretty short. The uniform standards related to substance abusing licensees, otherwise known as SB 1441. We did close the public, the 15-day modified text period. We received no comments. I am currently working to put the submission rulemaking binder to DCA and agency. That'll probably occur by the end of this month. We will be taking up the sponsored free healthcare events, AB 2699, shortly. Advertising guidelines, display of license number and advertising. Staff is working on developing language for that, bring it back to the full board, possibly in the next board meeting, whenever that is next year. The prostitution enforcement and the continuing education ethics requirement, obviously those items were discussed in committee earlier, so we'll be bringing those up shortly. And then the hand hygiene requirements, this package is still under staff development. We probably will, I would imagine, have it with initial filing with the OAL by the summer is kind of our current track. It's sort of a lower priority package right now because of other ones we're dealing with. Any questions? Okay.
Any questions? Okay. We're done with the board discussion on 5. Let's now take public comment on any of the item 5 issues. And please remember that we have a 2-minute comment period.
Yoon Kim, Empress College. I have a comment on the whole discussion about the continuing education providers. 1,200, 1,300, that's a large number for our profession, given the number of licensees in the state. And I'd like the board to consider requiring only the schools to be able to provide continuing education, because the schools are already vetted by the Acupuncture Board, the curriculum has been approved. And you really do know the quality of the schools that are approved by the Acupuncture Board. So it would lessen your expense in terms of auditing, because I don't know how you control the quality of all hundreds of classes that are being offered by 1,300 providers. So I'd like to ask the board to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Lang, the Council of Acupuncture Oriental Medicine Associations. And this is very important that I know that the provider need to be qualified. And I kind of disagree for the suggestion that only the school, because we have a lot of association, we have a lot of good practitioner, and then they have a very, very rich practice experience. So that's why, and the association actually is got a lot of sources to be a good provider. That's my opinion.
Thank you very much.
Just a comment on the occupational analysis. We've seen the percentage of questions on the California exam go down, and it's because of the occupational analysis. And I would suggest that when you send that occupational analysis out, to do it in English, Chinese, and Korean, because I think that practitioners who are not totally fluent in English might not pay attention to it, and I think it's important to have the input of all practitioners.
Thank you very much.
Runama from ACMA. Regarding the continuing education, I think the continuing education, especially for the practitioner, I think the organization will more know what the practitioner needed and can be provided. But that should be limited, because I know somebody gave the continuing education 3 days charge $3,000. So I want the board to pay attention. Who is qualified can give the continuing education and what they were taught. Because I know recently they invited some people from mainland China. I even don't know, did they pay, because they earn a lot of money. Did they pay the tax? Okay, did you legalize? This really, you can see why a lot of people want to be the provider. There's probably something behind. I want to really encourage the board to pay attention to that. Or otherwise, rule us continue education. What we need continue education. What for? It's not to make the money. It's educate the provider, protect the consumer. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Steve Given, Associate Dean, CIS. Regarding hand hygiene development, just perhaps a point of information, there is already a national standard for that. And in fact, the standard reference for that is cited in your own regulations. And I hope when you are considering whatever you're considering, and I look forward to it, that it would be in alignment with the pre-existing national standard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ann Shelton Crute. In regards to who should be allowed to teach CEU courses, I respectfully disagree with the idea that it should be in the schools, and I also respectfully disagree that it should be only within the professional or within the professional organizations. Our scope of practice in California allows us to use herbs not only from China, but from Western tradition, Tibet, Ayurvedic tradition in India. There are many great traditional medicine systems that are very highly regarded and have a great tradition as great as that of exclusively China. And many existing acupuncturists and Chinese medicine practitioners are also aware of and have deeply studied these other forms of traditional medicine. So I think it's important that we limit the amount of bureaucracy and red tape for practitioners. It's already tough to make a living in this economy, in this state. It's a very expensive state, and having to pay the teacher who has to also give a cut to the schools or to the professional organizations, that makes it uncomfortable for all the practitioners out there. But also, more importantly, it limits the import of the opportunities for studying the really deep traditions of traditional medicine that we have access to that might not be, let me back up 1 minute. In school, we have our curriculum, which is very good. We do study the classics, but sometimes what we learn in clinic is not necessarily sometimes what we learn in clinic for clinical practice is not necessarily the same thing that we study for the test. And it's important to understand everything for the test so that we understand how it fits with Chinese medicine. But we need to allow people to also pursue these other paths that are protected by our scope.
Thank you.
Jacques Marmarco, Empress College, Academic Dean. Just wanted to say that we have had 100 approved practitioners every year for the last 7 years. So if you do the math, it's 100 a year, and that's a lot of approved. And I believe that really needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Philip from Nassau University. I continue with the topic about the CEU providers. Maybe not just the schools, not just the professionals, but we do need the criteria or guidelines for who should be the provider. Like right now, anybody can be a provider, but like we should limit, like say, some very, very qualified professionals, they've been practicing for over 10 years, he could be the provider or something like that. We should have the guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a comment. I want a comment.
Well, you can comment if it's pertinent to the what was agendized in the reports, not necessarily the outside information about re-looking at the CE stuff because that hasn't been agendized yet. But
Okay. I want to comment on one thing. The lady said that some provider invite some guests from another country, pay them, and those things that the board, I don't think the board has the authority to looking for how much they pay for it. If they have to pay tax, this should be the,
Sorry, we should wait on this one.
Okay.
We didn't agendize looking at the CE provider criteria or any of that just yet. So I think the idea is that it'll be a future agenda item and it will be looked over very closely. But as it stands right now, it was just a report kind of on the update and status of all the providers. So in terms of board member discussion, I want to make sure that we keep it to that.
Daisy again from the AACMA. Just 1 minute to bring the more strong voice. I am total agree what Dr. Yang and Dr. Rola Ma the voice just says. So should make a really like a regular standard quality codifying or the regulation for the has to be the education, continuing education provider. That's important. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are healthcare professionals, and the continuing education is so important. I know some practitioners, they will pay like $1,000 for just one night of the class because it's really the hands-on class, and people learn that and they can make a lot of profits out of it. They have a lot of, they can use the technique they learn and treat a lot of patients. And so the cost is, maybe one concern, but it's not the main concern. But the quality, though, to protect the consumer, to ensure the patients, they trust us as the primary care physician and continue to see us as doctors and not just technicians. It is very important to control the quality of the CE providers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Any further board questions, discussion? Wonderful. Let's move on to agenda item number 6, update, discussion, and possible action on committee reports and recommendations. The first one under this item is the research committee, and Gina was the interim chair of the research committee today. So if you wouldn't mind giving us an update, Jeannie.
Oh, boy. Let me go find the tab. Hold on. Okay, so I think for the research committee meeting, Dr. Corradino was absent today, and so we tabled agenda item number 3 on dry needling, as I understand that he did some digging in and spoken to people regarding this part, so we weren't able to talk about that today. And I believe regarding the sale of acupuncture needles, I think Ben reported on that regarding the pharmacy board and the schools and the different citations that led us to this discussion that got on the agenda. And otherwise, I don't think there's anything more to report. I think we had some new agenda items added.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jeannie. The next committee was the Education Committee. Jamie, if you wouldn't mind giving us an update.
Sure. I'd like to report that the Education Committee worked through proposed language that staff provided regarding ethics courses for licensees to take, and we looked at a more in-depth way of how we can detail this type of language. So we've given details back to staff. We'll bring it back to the board. So.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jamie. The third committee meeting that met today was the Enforcement Committee, and I'm the chair of that meeting, that committee. We discussed 2 different items. One is the revised disciplinary guidelines, in which Christine and Mark really prepared a very exhaustive list of recommendations for revision. They're going to go ahead and take that back to the office, make some further revisions, and bring it back to the full board upon completion. The other thing that we talked about is the prostitution prevention and condition of office regulatory package. We're actually going to refer that to the board right now to take a look at the language for adoption. Can Mark give us an update on what the
I'm sorry, I completely was looking, I'm sorry, Hildy, repeat that.
Not to worry. Do you have the updated language on what we would be voted on? What we would be voting on today for the conditions of
Yes,
office?
yeah.
Okay.
That was the one, yeah. We were,
I knew that there was one.
Yeah, so for the board members who weren't on the committee, if you could turn back to the tab of your packets that talks about the enforcement agenda. It's actually the tab number 3 called Prostitution Prevention Condition Regulatory Rulemaking. And Mark prepared a memorandum on this issue and suggested some regulatory language, some proposed text. I think we made some revisions to it, so.
very basic revisions, just
Very basic
changing where we put it, et cetera, which I'll go over in a second.
And because this is a committee report and the committee voted on it, it is a motion and it's already been seconded. So it is available to the full board now for discussion and public comment.
To vote for the
Yes,
language.
yes,
Okay,
exactly.
got it. All right.
So, if you look at the sheet right here, it just explains real briefly the language that was previously approved. You'll notice that it was 1399.450 condition of office, which has strike through all the way through it for subsection A and subsection B. We will be striking, and this is the language that the board had previously approved. What the committee agreed to do was we are going to keep the strike through of subsection B on there. Subsection A will not be struck through. That will still be a regulation that will be in place. So I'll just read that real quickly. 1399.450 condition of office, subsection A. Every acupuncture office shall be maintained in a clean and sanitary condition at all times and shall have a readily accessible bathroom facility in accordance with Title 24, Part 2, Building Standards Code Sections 494A.1 and 1994 Uniform Building Code Section 2902.3. So that will remain in place. That's already existing. The new proposed regulatory language, which we'll be adding to Title 16 of Division 13.7 of the California Code of Regulations. Kim and you, Francisco, are you okay? Okay. We will not be adopting a new Article 6.5 enforcement beginning with 1399.463, so you can cross that out. We will not be adopting that. Our proposed regulatory language is 1399.469, and it will be .4, prohibited sexual acts, not .3 as indicated in the packet. So it'll be 1399.469.4, prohibited sexual acts. And it reads as follows. Subsection A, any person subject to regulation by the Acupuncture Board who knowingly engages in or aids and abets in by owning, leasing, licensing, or operating a location where sexual acts or attempted sexual acts occur involving any person, including but not limited to patients, clients, employees, patrons, visitors, or customers, whether or not fees for services are paid, that person shall be guilty of unprofessional conduct. Subsection B states, B, sexual acts as defined in this regulation means the touching of any part of a person for the purpose of sexual arousal, gratification, or sexual abuse. Sexual acts includes but is not limited to sexual intercourse, masturbation, sexual stimulation, and sexual penetration. Subsection C states, the license, certification, or registration of that person shall be subject to denial, suspension, or revocation by the Acupuncture Board. And then just below that, we have note authority cited. We will be removing from the authority cited section 131, so it will read 731. Thank you. It will read note authority cited 4955, comma Business and Professions Code, and then we will be adding in reference 731, comma Business and Professions Code. So that is the language that the committee had approved to referral to the full board.
Any questions? All right. May I have a motion?
There is a motion already on the table.
There is a motion.
And it's already seconded, yeah, because it came from the committee. The committee approved the language, so it is now to the full board, so you just need public comment and board comment.
Okay, just for my own clarity, I thought the motion was to refer this to the board, and then at the board, we would need a new motion to adopt it. We just used the motion from the
You can
committee.
use the motion from the committee because it came from 2 board members, so you have a motion and a second.
Okay. Procedural tutorials.
I mean,
I
you
wrote a
could
whole
do
motion right
I
here.
know.
You could do it your way too.
No, let's just keep it, because I don't think I wrote exactly what I wrote last time. so.
Okay. All right, seeing as we have a motion and a second, do we have any public comment? Hearing none, do we have any further board discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and take a vote. Mark, please.
Okay, so I just, entire board roll call?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so it is continuing the Enforcement Committee's motion to approve the staff language approved by the committee and delegation of staff to make non-technical changes to, delegate, do we need to do a delegation to EO or?
That's not yet, we're not at that stage, so it's just to put it out for a 45-day comment period.
Okay, so to approve the text, basically.
Mhm.
Okay.
Can we just vote, have the members that didn't vote, or everybody votes?
No, it's now a full board vote.
So it's essentially repeating the Enforcement Committee's motion they already made,
Yeah.
technically speaking, okay. Okay, so it was moved by Jamie and seconded by Hildy. So we'll do the vote again. Alganato,
Yes.
Zamora,
Yes.
Chan,
Yes.
Cordino, absent. Francisco Shea,
Yes?
Jeannie King,
Yes.
Dr. Matecki.
Yes.
All right. 6-0, that motion is out.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Good.
Let's move on to agenda item number 7, consideration and possible action on proposed amendments to Title 16 CCR Sections 1399.480, 490.1, 490.2, and 490.3.
So, members, we started to kind of pass it down and during our public comments, so it was a little confusing. So I want, if you don't have, we have modified text and then 2 forms. I just want to make sure everybody has this. I'm kind of guessing they don't, so,
And we need something covered.
right.
So you want us to look at the modified text?
That's it?
Okay.
One more packet.
Get one?
Does everyone have one down there?
One more.
One more packet.
Oh,
Anybody else need one?
Modified text? We have it.
Yeah.
Modified text and the 2 forms. Got it? All more, okay, all the members have it? Okay. I think we've covered all the bases here. Okay, members, this is the rulemaking package. At our last full board meeting, I had let you know that Office of Administrative Law had disapproved our rulemaking for AB 2699, free and sponsored healthcare events. Almost all of the items that they had disapproved us for were just sort of procedural or non-technical things, but they were if you know, you had were given a copy of the decision of disapproval. The items were all pretty non-substantive, but for the purposes of following the Administrative Procedure Act, the APA does require us to take the changes in the language and the forms back to the board for reapproval, and then it will be released to the public in a 15-day public comment period. Once that's completed and there's no adverse comment, if there are comments received, obviously we'll bring it back to the board to address. If there are no comments received, we will make the changes, the approved changes, and resubmit it to OAL for approval. OAL has been very helpful in this process, so a lot of the changes that are set out here were done in that, and Kelsey has been very helpful also, so I'm grateful to both folks. In looking at the text, you'll notice that the modifications to the text are just double strike through for deletions and double underline for added text. I'll just quickly go through the sections. You'll notice that we had renumbered the sections to a different subsection. For the definition section is 1399.407 now. And we had added in subsection 3 the definition of what an in good standing out-of-state provider means. In the next section,
Which actually, sorry, just to clarify, that was already approved language.
Yeah.
It was in a different section, and so OAL said that it wasn't clear. So we added it to the very beginning, so now it applies to all the regs of going forward.
Right.
So it made it a lot more clear.
Yeah, just about every one of these changes is in direct response to OL's disapproval. So the hope is that once all of this is approved and done, that we'll just be able to resubmit it for smooth sailing here on out. 1400.1 was renumbered to 1399.407.1. There's no real changes to that section other than just updating a reference to the form that is used. 1400.2 has been renumbered to 1399.407.2. We just again updated the reference to a form there. We also, as Kelsey mentioned, removed the in good standing language and moved it to the definition section. In that section, subsection 2, OAL had some concerns about, what's the date for when applications are received, or when is the start date, or whatever. So we just added in some short language requiring the date to be the 12-month period starts when the application is received by the board. And then in section 1400.3, which has been renumbered to 1399.407.3, again, just made some cleanup, capitalize lowercase c to uppercase c, and we had a very thorough OAL review and attorney here, very thorough.
Lowercase b?
Yes, yes, yes.
What kind of website is it?
Anyway, so that's changes to the language. If you could refer to the forms. The first form is the form that is required to be sent to DCA directly. The only change to this form is the revision date, which is noted at the bottom as being now in 2016. And then on the back page, there was contact information that was also updated to the current corrected contact information.
And just to confirm, we're looking at 901A.
901A, sorry. Okay. Form 901B, which is the last form. This one, there has been a few more changes to it, again, in response to OAL's concerns. The big change that you'll notice is on the first page under application instructions, there is now full detail to the out-of-state applicant as to how they apply for their background check. It's either fingerprints on hard cards or a live scan inquiry, and OAL had some concerns that it was not explained well enough to the out-of-state applicant how they would go about doing that. We just added in some language that we had found used by another board. So that includes that. If you go to the next page, page 2, capitalizing W. And then on page 3, you'll notice there was a disclaimer that has been added. I'm going to, if I could defer to Kelsey as to what this means. It's a little...
Hold on, I'm sorry, I want to go back. I want to add something to the procedure part. There is a part for ink print fingerprints, non-live scan, and there's a $49 fee for the board to process those because the board has to do the work on those rather than live scan where you just go to a facility and pay the fee directly to the facility. So I think that it should be a processing fee to the board there so that it's very clear who you're paying.
To the board, okay.
Because in the very first bullet point, you have all applicants must submit a processing fee of $25 made payable to the board, check and writing order only. So I think that that language should be reflective so that those individuals who are doing the ink print know that they have to pay that fee as well as this $49 fee.
It's consistent. Okay.
Oh, so sorry, you want me to do?
And then on page 3, we added in a disclaimer. OAL had some concerns about information sharing, et cetera. So
So essentially, this lets the applicant know that pursuant to the statute and our regulation, in order to collect the information that they're going to do, that information is going to be given to other governmental agencies in order to do things like get a background check or to ensure that the applicant hasn't been disciplined in their own jurisdiction. So it is letting them know that information will be shared. It also includes a disclaimer about that the individual under the Information Practices Act has a right to that information if they want it and how to go about getting that, but that there are some exceptions to that, namely pursuant to Civil Code Section 1798.40. So that is also listed there.
okay. All right, and then on page 4, we had added, again, there was some concerns from OAL about just the background information that out-of-state applicants provided, that our Form 901B was a little bit vague about some of the stuff that we requested. So we just added in a couple of additional questions to help clarify that. Conviction of any crime can constituting grounds for denial of licensure, et cetera. Did some renumbering. And then on the last page, page 5, under the acknowledgement certification section, we had just kind of cleaned up the language on one of the bullet points about holding a current valid license or certificate in good standing, et cetera. And down at the bottom, we also added in a disclaimer that authorization will not be issued until clearance has been received from the DOJ and the FBI. That way, it makes it very clear to the applicant that they will not be able to participate in this event unless they have clearance from the FBI DOJ. So those are the changes.
Mark, I had a question.
Yeah.
And ask me if I'm just not reading this right. Because the title of the document says request an authorization to practice without a license at a registered free healthcare event. Should that say request for authorization to practice without a California license at a registered free healthcare event? To me, if I read that, I'd be like, wait, we're allowing people to...
Yeah, other boards have just had without a license, so we modeled it on that.
So here's what it is. I think it's modeled one after the statute, and then second, DCA actually came up with these two forms for the boards, the healthcare profession boards. And so, and this one obviously could be tailored more to what the board's needs were.
Okay.
But it was, everybody sort of implemented the same structure, and I'm pretty sure across the board, everyone has the same title for it.
Just about every other board we've seen just uses without a license.
Right.
And they've gotten it through regulation accordingly.
Okay,
so.
yeah, I don't want to hold it up, but I just read that, and then I read the second paragraph.
I mean, we could certainly change it.
Okay. Well, it's going to hold us up.
I don't see it holding us up. It's adding in the word California.
Yeah, because if you read it right now, it basically sounds like we're allowing people to practice at events without a license.
Okay, so you want to add in the word California.
California license. Because then if you read paragraph 2, then it explains it to you, but you have to read it, so.
So then we will also be changing
The language.
the language, which now that you say that, okay, it's right now. So it would be 1399407.2, and it will say submitting to the board a completed request for authorization to practice without a California license at a registered free healthcare event.
Let's make sure the title's consistent. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. That's it. Thank you.
No, they need to motion.
Obviously.
Okay.
So, does anybody have any questions? All right, let's take a motion. Yeah.
Do you need it? Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, I didn't know. I didn't realize.
I'll move to amend the proposed language as staff has recommended to approve the modified text for a 15-day comment period and delegate to the executive officer if there are no comments received during the public comment period, the authority to make technical, non-substantive changes and as necessary in completing the rulemaking file. I have a second.
Second.
Any board discussion? Public comment? No public comment? Let's go ahead and take a vote.
Okay, the motion is by Jamie he moves to amend the proposed language as staff has recommended, also including the changes made here today, to approve the modified text for a 15-day comment period and to delegate to the executive officer, if there are no comments received during the public comment period, the authority to make technical, non-substantive changes as necessary in completing the rulemaking file. The vote, Alganato?
Yes.
Zamora?
Yes.
Chan?
Yeah.
Cordino? Absent. Francisco Shea?
Yes.
Jeannie Kang?
Yes.
Dr. Matecki?
Yes.
6-0, motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. And you're confident that the things that we took care of today are sufficient to take care of this issue? Okay.
I believe so. The OAL's been very helpful. We've been communicating with them very regularly about making these changes and everything like that. And like I said, Kelsey's been on top of it too. So we think we're in good shape.
Wonderful. Thank you for your work on this. Let's move ahead to agenda item 8, approval of October 26, 2016 board meeting minutes. That's Mark again.
Okay, members, these are the draft meeting minutes from October 26, 2016. Please let me know if there's any changes or anything.
Great. I don't have any questions. I'd like to reemphasize that this format is great, and I'm glad we decided to go with this. It really increases readability and usability as far as determining what to put on the next agenda, so great job with this.
Thanks.
Do you guys have any questions or comments about the agenda? I'm sorry, about the minutes?
And then Dr. Matecki, just because you were not at that meeting, you're not a board member yet, I would suggest that you abstain from voting on this one.
I'll motion to approve the board meeting minutes from Wednesday, October 26, 2016.
Is there a second?
Who was that?
Jeannie seconds.
Any further board member discussion? Any public comment? Wonderful, let's take a vote.
Motion by Jamie is to approve the minutes as specified in the packet. The second is by Jeannie Kang. The vote, Alganato?
Yes.
Samora?
Yes.
Chan?
Yeah.
Cordino? Absent. Francisco Shea?
Yes.
Jeannie Kang?
Yes.
Dr. Matecki?
Abstain.
Abstain. Excellent. 5-0, motion passes.
Great, thank you very much, Mark. Let's move on to number 9, scheduling of 2017 board meeting dates. So, staff has been kind enough to introduce a little calendar into our board packet so we could take a look at these locations. I think our requirement is to meet quarterly, which we blow out of the water all the time. So at present, I think we should just focus on a quarterly meeting, and then we'll go ahead and make meetings as necessary in the interim. We usually have meetings, I guess, in Sacramento, LA, San Diego, and Oakland. We've been to San Francisco several times, and I know in the interest of fairness as well, we had a San Diego meeting at a school, and we'd like to open up that opportunity to the rest of the schools, both here and not present. So if you have a burning desire to host all of us at your school, please let us know, and we'll take that into consideration. I think we also started changing the board meetings to Wednesdays out of concern for the clinicians. So if that no longer works for the clinicians, or if another day would work better for everyone, please so advise. Otherwise, I'm up for any and all dates.
Well, let me just say this in terms of what we're looking towards, considering where there is talk about legislation and us pushing things through. Based on the legislative calendar, I would suggest us doing meetings, if we're doing quarterly, because you want to leave room in there for committee hearings, which is up to the board here, but I would suggest if we're doing quarterly meetings, probably February, May, July, and November. February, because I think the bill deadline is the end of February, and then May, bills are getting across, bills are committee, and then we for sure want to meet in July, because if there's a piece of legislation that we want to take a position on, we want to make sure it's done in July, because the legislative session ends the end of September. So we want to make sure we're ahead of that, because I think sometimes in the past we've been our meetings haven't aligned with the legislative calendar, and we've been kind of left out and had to schedule something on the fly. So if we were, my suggestion would probably be February, May, July, November. In February, I'd probably say the first 2 weeks of February for the first full board meeting.
So we have a heavy committee calendar as well for the first quarter of the year. Would you suggest doing the committee meetings on the same day, a day adjacent to our meeting day, or sometime in January?
So I'll give you what I have here. So the committee meeting in January, a full board meeting in February, and then we have a choice for the next committee meeting to be either April or May. And then we can still do a full board meeting in May. I'm sorry, excuse me. February would be full board meeting, and the next committee hearing meetings would either be March or April.
Will these be one-day meetings, Jamie, or two-day meetings?
No, they'd be one, just one day.
So that first committee would be in March?
No, it'd be January.
It would be January.
Does that give you guys sufficient time to prepare for this barrage of stuff that you have on your?
We do have a lot on our plate right now. To have a meeting again in a month would be very challenging.
It's challenging.
So, well, a question I think we need to ask, do we want to have a committee meeting first or a full board meeting first in the new year?
Full board committee.
Full board meeting?
Why won't we have a committee?
Just because we have so many things to go over.
Well, we
I
already,
mean,
we
I'm
also
not
have.
attached either way, but like, it
I
would
got
make
you.
sense the other way around. Full board meeting, then the committee meeting, I don't know.
Well, because we have so many items that we have to bring back to the full board, right? But don't we have to go back to committee to get those through? Because I know for us, in the education committee, we have to have, some language has to come back to the committee, which then has to go back to the full board. So ideally, we probably want to have committee meetings first, right?
We do have that.
Or we do the same format like we did today.
Or we could do the same format.
Public appreciates that.
It also depends on how heavy we can expect our agenda for the full board in February. I mean, if we
Okay.
really have a
That
lot
makes-
of
okay.
things going on.
Well, yeah, I mean, this format, I think we've got through 3 committees today, so.
I think it's the record.
But I think it's also
Okay.
because we didn't have like a huge full board agenda with like heavy
Yeah.
things, because we got such heavy things done in June and the previous.
Okay.
But if some heavy things show up, there'll be no way we can fit 3 committee meetings.
Yeah, and what's good about our board, and we've all, thank you to everyone, we all move our schedule around if we need to schedule something right away. I mean, we've had 12 meetings.
Well,
So then we can go February, May, July, November, and it's a combo of committees and full board meetings. And my only issue is just the timing, based on the legislative calendar. Because based on what we've been talking about, it sounds like we might be looking for authors for certain bills. So, but if everybody's fine with doing a combo like we did today.
So, Jamie, since you're the person most knowledgeable on the legislative schedule, you recommended first 2 weeks of February. What do you recommend for full board meetings in May, July, and November as far as the weeks we should be looking at?
I'd have to really look at the calendar, but I don't even know what to say. It's probably set, I just don't know. I just know the months. So, I mean, ideally, February, the end of July, the bill deadline is around there, so we want to meet sometime early February. May, things are kicking off, committee hearings are going on. So I think we're okay. The only big thing is July, because we want to make sure if there is a bill out there, we want to have a position on a bill that we might have to take a position on, because legislative session ends September or August 30th, 31st, and then we won't meet till November. Because we always meet kind of after the deadline passes, which doesn't really give us room to take any action. So. But I like the combo. If we could do the combo, we'll do all.
So why don't we do the combo, and then if we had more things come up, and then we separate the board meeting and the committee meeting. Otherwise, it's a combo is better.
And of course, the public will appreciate it.
And also, the board will have to begin initiating the sunset review report this coming year. So we will need the board's approval of that around the November timeframe.
So do those dates, or at least months anyway?
The months, yeah, for
Are the months
February.
okay?
Well, I can't hear you.
Are the months okay for everybody?
Yeah.
February, May, July, November? Or, and then I guess the next question, Ben, is there anything you're seeing on the horizon that we need, if we would need to do something in January?
Nothing that I'm seeing right now due in January, unless there's something to do with the regs at the last second. We received some comment,
Okay.
which we really don't expect to. These are purely technical changes that comments need to be limited to just those technical changes. So we are not anticipating any comments there.
You know, from July to November, that's 4 months. We have never gone 4 months without a meeting.
Oh, that was just an estimation, so we could
Oh,
do
okay,
something.
I'm just saying, it's just
Yeah, we
never
usually
happened,
had a
so.
September.
October, September? Yeah, I just put that out there. Well, because I was thinking about committees,
We
so.
pretty much had it every month or every other month, so, you know, just
We had a
saying.
February and May and September
February,
and
May,
November.
July.
So February, May, July, September?
No,
And if we need an extra committee meeting in April, we probably would have
Yeah.
to have one.
Yeah, whatever we
And then
needed.
May and July.
Because, yeah, this is the first time we've done a combo, so we might, it'll be less days, just the same amount of meetings, just less days.
Can we move to from November to October, so it's only 3 months allowed?
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, it's not wait for
Yeah.
the November.
Okay.
I would recommend more towards the end, just so that the censor report.
Yeah, because
can
if
be
we do October,
prepared.
we might have to do another one in
Yeah, yeah,
November,
if
that
we
gives
need
us
it.
the time.
Oh,
yeah,
right,
so-
gives some
So,
leeway,
yeah,
okay.
February, May,
July,
July,
and
and
October.
October.
So Ben, if we need a report out by November, so you want the meeting in October?
Go to
Yeah.
September.
Okay,
That would help.
and then we
You're
have
gonna need
that,
a special meeting for your.
You probably, we'll probably have to have a
I'm
special
Oh, I need
sure
more-
meeting.
yeah, that's why you
there's-
give us the
I'm positively
opportunity
sure there will be some
for the
more.
board to at least
special-
review it once, and then any changes that you dictate, we can go ahead.
and then we
back to
have our 1-year check-in, right? Up to the-
Correct.
That's true.
That would be
March.
middle to end of March.
But we're not going.
We're not going, I'm just.
No,
sending
just a
a
report.
We need
Okay.
to send a report.
Just a report, so,
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think we need board approval for the report, do we?
But we're not testifying. We're just.
No, we're not testifying,
Okay.
but then I can send that to
Sending in the report.
the leadership for review.
Okay.
So February, May, July, and October.
Yep. So which week, the third week or fourth week of the month?
You know, I think we better look at the legislative calendar exactly before we say for sure.
I agree, I think,
Okay.
I'll check, or we could check, because it's on the website, I mean.
I like
It's
that,
always tentative, isn't it?
I think it's that because the session, well, technically they were sworn in last week, so the schedule should be set.
I think it's important to be strategic about this, so to the extent that we can anticipate that as much as possible, and even if it's not set, I'm sure we can plan to
Yeah.
a certain degree.
What days though, does the board want to do?
Are Wednesdays
Wednesdays
okay
are
with you
fine,
guys,
yeah.
or?
No, I can't. I have the regular job on every Wednesday, from 8 to 7. I can't make it. I have a radio show.
On Wednesdays?
Every Wednesday.
Okay, and then we had it on Fridays, and that didn't work for you guys, right, the licensees?
Friday's good.
Friday's
there?
fine.
The reason why we changed it to Wednesday was because
Friday,
of the
then se-
Corodino. Works on
So
Fridays. and-
Corodino's not gonna say yes to Friday then, so maybe Thursday? Do you guys, Thursday?
Wednesday,
Thursdays.
Thursdays we can't do
Maybe he
it,
could
yeah.
work on Saturday, that one.
You tell Dr. Corodino. Tuesday, does anybody have an issue with Tuesday?
Can't do Tuesday.
Yeah, not Tuesday. Some of them had a board meeting on Tuesday night.
Does anyone have an interest in Monday? Monday, anybody?
Okay for me.
It's okay for me.
But, you
Any
know, we
day
have a
except,
one-board
any
member
day
missing.
except the
Yeah,
Wednesday.
so
I can.
why don't we say Fridays, because it sounds like everybody can do Fridays now and then figure out with Dr. Cordino. Because
Okay.
there's 6 of us that can do Fridays.
Let's look at Fridays and Mondays,
Right, okay.
Okay.
because no one has an issue with Mondays
Monday?
except for the
Well,
fact that
there's
it's
no
Monday.
good this time.
The Monday, no over here.
No.
Oh, so it's a Friday then.
Let's try Fridays.
Fridays are good, because we used to
You're
the
gonna have
Friday,
to talk
right?
to Dr. Corodino, because this is why we changed it.
Yeah. Hopefully it's just one day.
Friday, then we can stay
Well, it's
over
Monday
weekend.
times
That's in
12
April.
meetings, so it's actually like 12 days. 4, okay. So,
Friday's okay with you, right?
Do we want to finalize tentative dates?
we can't do it without the schedule, the legislative calendar.
Oh, we're gonna wait
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can check it tomorrow.
So we'll, We'll tentatively look at quarter one meeting in February, quarter two meeting in May, quarter three meeting in July, quarter four meeting in October, subject to our committee calendar and the legislative calendar and our board member schedules. If there are any other considerations that affect changing any of these board meeting dates, please let us know. And that's all I got on the board meetings. Any other board member discussion?
Great.
Public comment on this, on our calendar? Since you guys go to our meetings just as much as we do.
Our schedules matter more.
Philip from Lancaster University. Just a little bit consideration. I know from so far your schedule should be fine, except May. Just consider we're all CCOM school or ACOM schools. Council college meetings every May and November, the first weekend.
Okay, we want that.
Thank you.
Second week then.
Hopefully I'll go for
We have become a very considerate board. Very cooperative and very considerate.
Thank you.
I just want to say that, put it out there.
Any other public comment on the schedule? Wonderful. Let's move on to agenda item number 10. We're making record time here. I'm very impressed with all of us. Future agenda items.
on anything.
On anything. Ben, do you wanna?
Acupuncture related?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right. Sorry.
Mark, you
Yes,
got down
please.
all the agenda items for the committee. Okay, were any of them transferable to the full board?
Not that I have.
Okay.
Okay.
Not that I have.
Jacques Marmarco, Empress College Academic Dean. I just wanted to see, and I think you just answered that. As far as those public comment, are they transferable to these, to the full agenda meeting, so I don't have to repeat the repeat of the 10.5% and the DOM and so on? Thank you so much for all your good work.
You have that, right? The herbal portion of the exam, the KOM and CCOM.
He brought it up at the last one.
Yeah, and especially with the
It's an issue.
occupational analysis, and
Yeah,
that's a really big concern for the schools, because we do need a 2 years lead to prepare the students if you decide to go that way, which I don't think there's any reason, because all our practitioners are doing very well with the 83 formulas, and the other formulas are an option. The B formula, there's 166 formulas, so it's quite a bit of work. So thank you for all your good work, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah. So just to clarify, any agenda items brought up, whether it's in committee or a full board agenda, gets put on a list, and then the board president and the EO review it for when it can be placed on the next agenda.
First of all, I want to show our appreciation to the board, and actually I really enjoyed today. It's a long day, but especially we have the new member coming up that on behalf of all our association that we welcome Dr. Lee and Dr. What's your last name? Mataki, yeah. And I would like to ask that is it possible that the board can consider to put in the agenda to we just regarding to the examination. And we actually be discussing outside during the lunchtime that we concerned that we do need some time to talk about it, because like that's kind of very important issue for the California. That's based on the public interest. I really think that way. Also, the other thing I want to give some information to the board. Probably you will be considered to talk about it. And now that we have a whole country that we have tried to move the federal bill is from the Congress bill, the HR 3849, that will become new number next January. That is called the HERO and the Senior Act. That will be put acupuncture benefit, insurance benefit for all the veteran and soldier and their family and any people over 65 years old. This is a huge bill for the profession, not only for the professions, for the people of American. So, and that I want the board put some attention on it. And Keoma is a sponsor with about 36 of the association so far, and become the endorsement and also co-sponsor. And that's one thing. I want to say something about dry needle, but if you don't let me talk about that, I cannot talk about. Maybe somebody can talk about the dry needle issue.
Point of clarification, Michelle.
Yes.
Regarding the exam, is there a specific item that
Yes.
you wanted to talk about?
Yes, the NCCOM examination, because we kind of the lack of the information from the board, because it's like I attending almost many times. And on the June that we do listen to the report from the OPES, but then 2 months later, we thought that the board approved to adopt it maybe in 2018 for the NCCOM examination. So to us, that we feel that as a lot the issue is not clear. For instance, like a fee, how much for the fee for the student, and like all the detail we kind of want the board can give us some kind of direction.
So this information was discussed at the June meeting, and it is on YouTube. I would recommend that you review it, because we can't just, we can look at the specific things, but if
Right.
we've already covered this, then we.
Yeah, I
can cover
understand
specific
that.
points.
That's why I'm saying that we're missing that part. It's not your fault, it's our fault. Okay.
So it's on YouTube.
Yeah, we can look at that, but we're still demanding some consideration. That's what I try to ask. Okay.
Any other public comment?
I want to make sure that the dry needling, which is a very urgent issue for the state of California, that we pay attention to it urgently and as quickly as possible, that get on the agenda, because otherwise it's really affecting the consumers heavily. And we try to fight back as much as we can as a profession, but I hope as Acupuncture Board that you'll back us up. So that's the most urgent issue that I want to say. And also for the education, that your question is what specific issue that we're talking about with the NCCAOM is the fee. So if you want to put that on the agenda to discuss how that fee is going to be allocated, knowing that the Acupuncture Board is short on money. But how come the money go directly to NCCAM and not go through the Acupuncture Board? So the Acupuncture Board has some control of the money and therefore some control over the exam. So that would be something that I would like further discussion.
Thank you.
From Nansha University. As I just mentioned the proposal, I hope this will be taken to the future agenda for the either regulations or reinforcement or enforcement for the two practice like orthopedics and herbal medicine. I will make the proposal to email to the research committee to everyone. Maybe you can preview it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to request the please put the dry needles issue in the future, maybe next meeting the agenda. And also the provider, the high standard provider for education, continuing education, if can put it on next meeting the agenda, it would be good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron Zeidman from Five Branches University. California has played a leadership role in many areas, and it's played a leadership role especially in acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine because we have such a large Asian population here. And I mention this leadership role because the dry needling is other professions believing they can practice this profession without going through the rigor that other professionals have to go through. And I think the point I want to make is that the associations here, the colleges in California, and the Acupuncture Board in California, I think will be playing a leadership role in this coming year about dry needling. Because if we don't say anything, then others will take it over. And if we do play that leadership role, we will play a leadership role to the rest of America. And as you know, North Carolina has fought very hard. Just to repeat, one of the reasons North Carolina is important is because the military is based there, and it is the veterans hospitals where the acupuncture by physical therapists is showing up. So other states are doing their share. And I think in the future, certainly the schools, the associations, and the acupuncture board can really define, if you want to be a dentist, you need to go through dentist training. In the old days, it used to be barbers who did dentistry. And if you want to do acupuncture in traditional Chinese medicine, Oriental medicine, you have to go through a training defined as we have done historically. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? I think just one brief comment for me, and then I'll take final questions from the board. It seems like we have a lot of demand for the dry needling issue, which we can certainly put on the agenda. I think in line with that, if and when we do put it on the agenda, we should put something on the agenda about really understanding the scope of what the board can and cannot do as a regulatory body, both to educate the board members and the public, because we all want to do good. We all want to make a difference, but we are held to our responsibilities as laid out by the people above us. So we should definitely include that as a primer so that we can understand what we can and cannot do lawfully. So I hope we can add that to the agenda as well, and it would be a good educational opportunity. I think, as part of our board meetings, I'd like to include more education to us so that we know what we're doing, how we're doing it. Jeannie, I think, mentioned something about understanding the budgets and just continually training ourselves. Bagley teen. I gotcha. Continually training ourselves, in light of the North Carolina decision as well. It's good to be informed and it's good to be trained, and every board meeting is an opportunity for us to do that, not only for us but for the public. So let's do that.
And Hildy, I think because of the dry needling, it has been a national issue beyond 2010. Can I have this discussion with you or no?
I would just really, because it's not on the agenda, we just don't want to open the discussion and start something. We agendized it, but it was tabled, so, and the committee did vote to do that. So I would just refrain from any discussion on it at this point.
I have one more question, or actually a comment regarding the dry needling issue. Yoon Kim, Empress College. I know that our board, the acupuncture board, has no authority over physical therapists, but they are breaking the law, for instance, in California. And so what is the physical therapy board doing about these physical therapists who are going beyond their scope of practice? And so what can the board do in terms of working in conjunction with the physical therapy board to make sure that that agency enforces the law? So that would be very helpful for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any?
In next meeting, we really I would like to get to know the answer about the NCC ALM, the examination fee we are going to. So we would like to get more answer next meeting if we could put on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, and I'd like to thank everybody for their comments, and we appreciate it because that's how we set our meetings most of the time. But I also let the public know that we also have mandates from the legislature to work on certain things on our strategic plan. So many times that takes up our agendas. So we do our best to include your items, but I think for us a priority is getting through our strategic plan. You saw all the items we have to work on. So we'll do our best to work with all of you to make sure we address these issues. But just so expectations are met, we make sure to work through our strategic plan first.
And I also want to make sure to utilize our website. Our website has these cameras that are here. All of the meetings are recorded and it goes out on YouTube. And so the last meeting, the June meeting that you guys are all talking about regarding the NCCOM and the decision we made is online, is on the website. And I know there's a language barrier here and what information is there and is not there. But the 8 hours of tape have been recorded on all the questions you might have that could be answered by looking at that meeting.
Just want to make sure that you say that did they really mention about the fee schedule? How much is it?
So that we.
So that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm just like you want me to go to? Yeah, we will. We will that, but that's why I'm trying to say that sometimes some detailed issue that we need to know. We are not offensive, okay? We come over here just for the best for the profession, okay? It's nothing to do. We try to be doing something wrong, and we try to make sure that all the information is covered then the public have a right to know that, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, any other board comment? All right. Happy holidays. Travel safely, everyone. Thank you very much for coming, and see you next year. Meeting is adjourned.